Hello, everybody. Welcome. It is Tuesday, February 15th. I hope everybody is doing well. Let me just move this screen a little bit so we can get mom and dad in there. I am so honored to have my friend Ronnie Kroell here, but I'm going to say hello to you guys first, and then I'll tell you how we met, and then we'll get into our whole topic tonight, which is love and honoring yourself. And I have to tell you guys, I could not ask for a better person for this topic. And I'll tell you why after I say hello. Hello, Gina. Good to see you. Welcome. Priscilla, welcome. Thank you for being here. Priscilla, Ronnie is one of our moderators. Alicia, hello. Beth, hello. Crystal, hello. Hello, Michelle. Good to see you. Come on in, guys. Tell us where you're at, where you're watching from, and welcome, everybody. Hello, Claudette and Karen. Good to see you. Thank you for watching on YouTube. Sister Sledge, Diane, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Sharon, hello. Gloria, thank you for watching on YouTube. I appreciate the YouTube, you guys. YouTube going a little bit slow, but you know what? It's like a mountain. You got to take the steps one step at a time. And I'm just so confused with YouTube. It's YouTube and the TikTok and then the Facebook and the Instagram, and I'm like, oh my god. I mean, I know you, Ronnie, have accomplished all that social media platform stuff. It just gets a little crazy. Gets a little
Oh
crazy.
yeah, it's a bit overwhelming.
A little bit.
So
Nick, thank you for being here. I appreciate you being here. So you know how we go, everybody. We stall for a couple minutes so you could let everybody else get in here. Tell your friends, like, follow, share, come on in, and we're gonna get started after I take a sip of water. Cheers, everyone.
do it. I'm getting comfortable.
Please do. Please do. So I have to tell you guys, oh my god. It's been a long time. So I graduated massage school in 2002, everyone. And in 2002, um, I I had an office that I shared with a bunch of people, and then I got to teaching for a little bit, and then just a couple of years later, I worked at a place in Chicago called Sur Spa, and it was a spa for guys. The women could come too, but it was a spa for guys, and there was you can get waxing and massages and uh laser not laser something, but eyebrow stuff and just whatever you wanted. All that like fancy schmancy hot stone, all that kind of stuff. And I was in charge of the massage therapist. And one day um this guy comes in, and it was my client, and I welcomed him back, and we started chatting, and it was Ronnie. And Ronnie, I told Ronnie, he asked me what do I do, how long I've been doing massage, gave him the whole spiel, been doing it for a couple years, been teaching. And I said I also do this. Oh, which one is this one?
This is Tiny.
Oh, Tiny, so
He's the
cute.
elder.
Oh, so cute. And Ronnie was talking about, um, his hope for what his visions and dreams were. And I said, well, I do psychic work, mediumship work, energy work. I wanted to do. I've been doing retreats for a while. I did retreats for a specialized retreats for the gay community to teach gay men to come from their hearts. And we just struck a conversation, and I've known you since.
It's crazy because I walked into Sir Spa not long after my grandmother had passed away, and I was going through a lot of emotion. Like I was just going through all the stages of grief,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to figure out myself and figure out life after losing my grandmother. And you were just so loving and kind. And I remember you reading my energy. And I remember the massages being so much different than anything I had ever gotten before, because you didn't only have the textbook knowledge of understanding the anatomy and what was going on with the muscles, but you brought a spiritual element to the room and to the massage that I had never had before. And I remember back then just how gifted you were and how in tune with the spiritual world that you were. And I remember to this day that you told me that my grandmother was with me and that, that she was looking out for me. And yeah, it was amazing. And I've just been so grateful to have you in my life ever since. I actually remember living in New York and being challenged with some things, and you talked me through some stuff, and you've always just kind of been there, and no matter how much time has gone by, or in between our chats or seeing each other, like, we can just pick up where we left off. And I love that about our friendship.
I love that too. I really do. And I think, our talk tonight, and thank you, by the way, our talk tonight is about honoring self. And if you could tell, I mean, I wrote a little bio for you on the flyer, but if you could tell people like where you started, where you what you went through and where you come from, like on I don't want to say your job, but all that you've been doing. Um, and I think that would be fascinating for people to know.
Well, it all started on a cold February night, Tuesday, February 1st, 1983. How much time do we have?
Yeah, we have as much time as you want.
Well, born, raised in Chicago. Chicago is my hometown, and I have so much love for the Midwest. And, growing up early in my preteens, my pimply faced preteen era, I used to spend a lot of time at my friend's house in Michigan City, and his mom was an incredible photographer, and she was also the photography assistant to Victor Skrebneski, well-known photographer around the world. And I fell in love with going through her photo books, and I said I would love to be a model one day. I just always wanted to bring character to life and wear amazing clothes and kind of I don't know, I guess looking back, I always wanted to be something that I wasn't. I always wanted to put on something and play a character. And she told me, Ronnie, you can do whatever you want if you put your mind to it in life. You can be whatever you want to be. And so, she kind of guided me into the fashion world and helped me figure out how to get some of my first photos done, get an agent, and put myself out there. And, from Chicago, exploring the fashion industry and going out on some castings and things like that, I didn't get my real big break until 2008, because in 2007 I auditioned for a reality TV show called Make Me a Supermodel, and I found it on Craigslist of all places. And they said, come on down today, auditioning for this new kind of concept reality show. And I said, oh, why not? Let's see what happens. And one thing led to another, and before I knew it, I found myself competing on this Bravo TV show with 13 other models. And it was hosted by Nikki Taylor and Tyson Beckford, both amazing professionals and superstars in the fashion world. And it was an incredible experience. And it challenged me to get outside of my own comfort zone, because I never thought I would ever leave Chicago. After living in New York for 3 months for the show, I decided that it was time to go and really chase my dream, even though it was going to be difficult. As an only child, it was really difficult leaving my parents behind, because I was like, here I am, I'm not leaving their house, I'm leaving the entire state and going across the country. But, they were very supportive in helping me follow my dream in fashion and modeling, and very loving. We all had a good cry, because I was leaving. And, I went to New York. I took the risk. And, I've learned in life, without risk, there's no reward. And when you're outside of your comfort zone and you're challenged is when you really learn and grow most. And I'm grateful that I did it. My New York days of 3 years living in New York were not easy. I call Chicago my heart. New York was definitely my backbone.
Mhm.
I learned how to become stronger in the face of adversity. And when challenges present themselves, you got to keep finding a way around them. But I had a wonderful experience in New York. And then I got bit by the acting bug. And LA started calling my name. I got the opportunity to go to LA, and I worked on a film for 30 days, and I fell in love with the weather, and I said, all right, it's time to time to take the next, chapter of the book and come to LA. So, and here in LA, I've just been really focused on finding my voice, being an artist. And I didn't realize it, but I had a lot of healing to do. And that'll kind of, I think, parlay and segue into our conversation tonight. I was going and going and going and always going, and I never really took a moment to stop and breathe and reflect on where I was going. It was always just kind of like this runaway train of following my dreams, which was great. But I didn't realize how much healing I needed to do from things from childhood, healing that I needed to do from breakups in relationships, healing that I needed to do from business relationships gone sour, people that have hurt me. I just kind of swallowed it, pushed it down, and allowed it to be in this lockbox. And I thought that that was the best thing to do, but I never addressed it. And so at some point, all of those experiences had to kind of bubble up and come out of the darkness into the light. And that kind of set me on the journey of what we call in the spiritual world, as you know, the dark night of the soul, and making peace with your shadow self, and then truly learning what it means to love yourself through it all. And I would say I'm grateful for my journey, even sometimes the harder parts that while I was going through them, I was kind of like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be experiencing this. But
Mhm.
without those things, I wouldn't be who I am today. And Chicago's my heart, New York's my backbone, and here in LA, I'm finding my authentic voice, my true voice underneath all of the social conditioning, underneath all of the political jargon, all of the news media, all the things that people wanted me, needed me to be, or I perceived that they wanted or needed me to be. Like, I'm finally getting in touch with what Ronnie needs and wants and deserves. And sometimes that's going to line up with what other people want around me, and sometimes it's not. And learning how to make peace with that through it all has been, I think, the hardest part. Because, you know, so yeah, so here I am in LA. I've been out here for 10 years, and just really focused on spirituality and healing and learning how to love myself, which is no easy task. I know there's a lot of people out there probably watching that are experiencing that too. That's You would never think that loving yourself would be that difficult.
Well, I think we're taught that also only child, we're taught that things are, you have to do for others, and you and I both have been people pleasers, and it is lessons that we learn about, how do you, when you're happy, when you love yourself, you have more to give instead of giving, 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 and you're depleted. I think that, you brought up some really good points. Being in being in Chicago and leaving it is totally outside of your comfort zone, outside of my comfort zone. My parents already deceased, but everything I knew was in Chicago. And to take that leap of faith and go, I didn't go that far, but I went to Sterling, Illinois, which is 45 minutes away from DeKalb, got married, got divorced, and stayed there for a year, and then did the 2,000-mile trip with a 45-pound dog, an 80-pound dog, and a Toyota Prius to come to Washington State. So, comfort zone, getting out of your comfort zone, taking that risk, and really listening to your heart, following your intuition, following that, we are always guided. And I've talked about this on my talks, and I believe I've heard you say the same thing about, we're always given what we need, not always necessarily what we want, but what we need. And I think that's the part that when we take these tiny steps and then leap, I think it's really, really impressive. Rose says, hello. Dina, hello. Gems, hello. Thank you for being here. Gloria says, love your explanation as I had a similar experience to learn to face my past and lessons I had to learn. It's sometimes a tough road, but surely necessary to grow and learn to love myself as well. Yes. Danya says, such a great comment. Would never think living yourself would be a difficult thing. Loving yourself, living or loving yourself. So true.
Exactly.
Right.
Sure.
Christina says hello. Kathy says, such a wise cat. Totally. He's totally channeling the cat. The wisdom is coming from Tiny. Let me tell you.
Finally.
So when you put yourself first, when you honor yourself first, you're honoring who you are. You said really important, your authentic self. How did you find or understand who Ronnie is? What really, how did you get that click that said, yes, I am being open, honest, truthful, in alignment with who I am?
Um, well, I think the short answer is that it didn't happen overnight,
Mm-hmm.
but I started noticing resentments build up within me and then explosive experiences where I held on to things so much that they accumulated over time. And then God help the poor soul that was the straw that broke the camel's back, because it was almost as if they got the lion's share for every experience I had up until that moment, to where they hurt me. And it wasn't fair to them. And so I
Mm-hmm.
had to start paying attention to how I was dealing with conflict, and if I was saying my piece or not, or if I was just going along to get along with people. And the more I just went along to go along, or I said the thing that I thought someone else wanted to say, every time I did that, I sacrificed a piece of my authenticity and my true self. And I resented that. And it was almost like spiritual and verbal constipation, because it was just
Mm-hmm.
built up and it was stuck in there, and that energy needed to go somewhere. So finally, unfortunately, it would come out in this ugly way in those explosions. And then I would beat myself up and shame myself for behaving in that way, because I didn't identify with that. I always identified with being a loving, caring, compassionate, patient, person. So I didn't know who that person was when he showed up and when those emotional outbursts happened. And I just, I think my mom saw it in me too, because there was a point when she realized she started seeing parts of, as parents do, they give us their best and sometimes not their best qualities. It just happens that way. And my mom has always been a wise woman, and she's always been in tune, whether she realizes it or not. But she bought me this book called uh, Anxious to Please, the 7 deadly habits of those basically that are anxious to please. It's an anxious relationship to love. And I started reading this book, and I started looking around, and I was like, is this some kind of gag? Am I on candid camera? Because every chapter I would read, it would feel like they were pinpointing exactly my life story, as if they had cameras on me the whole time. And you start to realize that a lot of the behaviors that you have in adulthood were behaviors, especially people pleasing, they were behaviors that kept you safe in certain scenarios as a kid. And because of that, it's hard to break those habits and patterns, because they're no longer serving you as an adult. The things you did, those habits that helped you as a kid, they're no longer serving you as an adult. They're actually hurting you and hurting
Mm-hmm.
other people. And I think that's the hard part, because people pleasing is ultimately selfish. It is purposefully manipulating people's perceptions of you to be liked, because you need that validation so much. You're looking outwardly for that validation. And to recognize that as being selfish is another thing I've never recognized myself as. I never saw myself as being selfish. I always thought that I was loving and giving, and you know, I didn't want to identify myself as selfish. But that's where, again, you kind of call into the light and dark parts of our humanity. Like, I had to acknowledge and welcome the fact that I had the potential to be selfish, and I had to see that as a part of me instead of shame it or put it aside or deny it or think that I couldn't be selfish at all. There are definitely times in my life that I've been selfish. So I think it was recognizing those explosive moments that I didn't want to experience anymore, and I didn't want to unfairly go off on someone that didn't deserve it. And reading this book, which I think anyone who's, recognizing that they're a people pleaser or they're healing from people pleasing or recovering from it, they should definitely go get that book, Anxious to Please. But I say recovering people pleaser because it's just like being a recovering alcoholic. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Like, because all it could take is that, one sip to go take a step backwards, even with all the progress that you make. And so simply being aware that you are a people pleaser or have the tendency to people please, if nothing else, if you can be mindful in a situation and recognize where you have an opportunity to go with your old patterns of behavior and continue people pleasing, or you could make a new choice and set a new healthy boundary and say, no, I'm not going to go down this path. I'm going to try going down this path and see what happens. You're not always going to get it right, but if you're at least aware of it, that's half the battle.
So true. And like I've told people on here before, when you say yes to yourself, the universe says yes back. And it's so important to everyone say yes to yourself first. You brought up a really good point about how we shame, and shaming is not honoring self. Shaming is lowering our vibration, lowering our perception of self, and we can shame with many ways. We could shame with food, with alcohol, with sex, drugs. We can get so stuck on self um, shaming that it turns into a habit that we feel better about keeping our vibration low and feeling stuck, because then we're looking for either someone to pull us out or looking for, like, I can't, and this is the reason why.
Right.
And it's something that I know you talk about in your talks, and how to create a better life for ourselves and our hearts. I mean, how do we just say that I am worthy, I am deserving, and I am more than enough? Because so many people, as people pleasers, as you mentioned, you know, in my case, I always look to everybody else to tell me that I was good enough. And that is something that is so, you know, challenging to get out of that habit and just say, okay, I honor me. By honoring me, I love me. And by loving me, I know that I'm more than enough. I am deserving. And changing the verbal dialogue is where it all starts. Now, everyone's like, well, the I ams, it's a mantra. It's, you know, you're just saying it just to say it. Okay. But, until you get on that bike and say, I'm going to ride a two-wheel from the four wheels, the training wheels, and you actually take them off, you have to step into the yes, to step into the action, to step into the being. And
Right.
those are really
You
important.
have to visualize it in your mind before you can manifest it in reality. And
Yes.
as in Hollywood, we say fake it till you make it. Even if you're saying your mantras and you don't necessarily believe them in that moment, at some point, if you are consistent in your repetition of the mantras, at some point it's going to click in and it's going to be more real than it was in the beginning. You know, and going back to what you said about shaming and being kind of like kind of addicted or follow like finding escape in food or sex or whatever. Um, Not everybody knows this, but we can get addicted to the chemical release of cortisol in our bodies. So if we get into patterns of shaming, we're actually addicted to that stress hormone of cortisol being secreted into our body, and the body is now craving that release of cortisol. So here we have a problem where we've done something that we're not necessarily proud of, and then we go into shame ourselves and we compound the problem, but it's a comfortably uncomfortable position. It's familiar to us, our body craves that cortisol release, and so we get into that addictive pattern. And until we can change the narrative and change the pattern, we're never going to truly experience anything different. But the truth is, people stick with the devil they know rather than the devil they don't. So if you're comfortable in this uncomfortable situation, the the fear and ego comes in and says, well, at least we know this. We've experienced this multiple times before on repeat, and it's probably less scary than the unknown if we try something else. But the truth is, what's on the other side of fear is probably going to be far better for us and not as scary as we've dreamt it up to be in our minds. But until we're willing to take that risk and try a new behavior, we're never going to know, you know.
So true. And like I've said on here before, it's fear, false evidence appearing real. I
Right.
mean, it's so important. Let me go to our comments here. Tracy says, hello. Hello, Tracy. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Tracy.
Her children are also in modeling.
Oh, yeah.
They're preteens in modeling. Um, Priscilla,
Oh, she found the book.
thank you for putting that on there. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
She found the book. I was
Oh, she
noticing.
did find the book. Yes. Thank you,
Great.
Priscilla. Danya says, I'm jumping up and down over here. So much good information. I just checked out the book from the library. Shout out to ebooks. Gotta love it. You got that right. Hello, Beth. Priscilla says, wow, that makes sense. I never thought of it that way. Thank you. See, there you go. We learn something new every day, guys. Every day. And the
True.
funny thing is, this is why I have so many people on here. So many people can say the same thing, and then somebody says it in a different way, but it's the same message, and it clicks for people. And I love that. I love
Well, it's
that.
a
This is,
different vibration, it's a different frequency. You know, I
yes,
found when I have something important to say, but I say it with my anger, it's got an anger low vibrational frequency on it. So not everyone's going to pick it up the same way. No
mm-hmm.
matter how passionate I am, I could be turning people off. But if I say the same thing from a place of love with a love frequency on it, you know, or from my own perspective, then, you know, it'll be more palatable. You know.
So true. So true. You, my friend, have just, I don't know, it's so nice to, this is why I had Ronnie on, everybody, because when Ronnie sets his mind to something and he sees it, he just makes it happen, and it happens in, like, it might take some time, but it you go for something and you follow your heart, and again, you say yes to the universe says yes back, and you say yes to yourself, and the universe says yes back. So it's so important to follow those dreams, follow that intuition, follow that my heart is taking me here. You might be completely wrong, but at least when you can say that I've done it, you scratch that off the list and say, I tried that way, that doesn't work. Give me another way. And when you let go and let go of the control and say, give me exactly what I need for this moment in this time period, it all happens because you get exactly what you need. Like you were saying, sometimes people come into our lives. They're there to teach us a lesson so then we can teach our experience to someone else. It's so important. Hello,
Well, and
Dorothy.
control is an illusion.
True.
Control is an
Very
illusion of fear and ego. We think we can control. And those of us who grew up with an anxious relationship to love, you know, or traumatic experiences, um, we try and control things in our adult lives because things were so chaotic before and we didn't have any control. So we think, oh, if we just if we can contain our experiences, we can control our experiences, that everything will be fine and we'll be safe. But that's just not how it works. I've learned the more I've tried to muscle things, control things, or manipulate things, it may feel good in the moment, but ultimately I'm also limiting my miracles. I'm not setting healthy boundaries that are protecting self and practicing self love. I'm putting up walls. You know, when you put
Mhm.
up your walls, nothing can get in. No one can harm you, but no one can love you either. And
So
so
true.
you got to be able to differentiate the difference between putting up a healthy boundary and learning to love yourself and put yourself first, and putting up those walls that are literally just shutting everything and everybody out.
And those are all ways of honoring self. I mean, those are some major ways of honoring self. And I want to say this again to everybody. You all deserve it. You all deserve it. And when you realize that you deserve it, it's like water that you drink. You're just gonna reach for that glass and take a sip. So cheers.
You do. And, you know, sometimes it can be difficult, again, going back to the shaming kind of patterns, because what would we do without the narratives that we've been telling ourselves for so many years? Many
Mhm.
times people have been saying they don't deserve it their entire life. And they wouldn't know what to do if that narrative went away. Who would they be? What would they identify with? And the truth is, when it comes down to identity, we're a soul with a body, not a body with a soul. The soul
Correct.
does not need to be limited or boxed in by the fact that you're a man or a woman, if you're gay or straight, if you're rich or poor, if you're religious or not. These are all just things that we attach to in our human incarnation. Our avatars attached to these different things. And the same is true of these stories. The little voices in our head, if the narrative is, oh, you're not worth it, you're not good enough, you're never going to get that. Well, in order to get what you've always wanted, you have to change that narrative to the I am worth it, I am worthy, I am deserving, I have the talent and the potential to get there. It might not happen overnight, but at least allow yourself to write that narrative where you get to be the hero of your story and not the victim of life. Life isn't happening to us, it's happening for us. And
Right.
we don't realize what powerful creators we are. You know, we have 80,000 thoughts a day as human beings, and studies have shown that 80% of them tend to be negative. And if you really truly believe in the law of attraction and manifestation, even if we could dial back, you know, that 80% negativity to 50 or 40%, our lives would change dramatically, because all of a sudden, like, if you could go a whole week without complaining or a whole week without shaming yourself, like, your life would change like that,
Right.
because it's all
So
about that
true.
vibration and that story. But first you got to get outside of believing that narrative, you know.
Tracy says, I have issues expressing my boundaries. I'm afraid I come off mean, so I let people pleasing skills take over.
Tracy, I feel you on that, because when I first started practicing boundaries, the smallest little boundary that I placed that no ordinary human being would normally look at as absurd or overreacting or whatever, the smallest thing, but because we've taught other people around us how to treat us, and we've shown them that we're going to put them first over ourselves, even the smallest little boundary that puts our need first is going to make you seem like a Disney villain. I promise you this. They're not going to know how to react to you. They're probably going to, they might call you a name, they might call you selfish, but you got to stick to that boundary, and you got to allow people an opportunity to be retaught. And that's where, you know, I had a business coach back in Chicago that said, Ronnie, we teach people how to treat us. You're half responsible for how they treat you. And so, especially when you're reparenting yourself and practicing boundaries, you have to go to someone and say, hey, look, I have to apologize. I've taught you that it's okay to treat me like this, probably for years. And honestly, it hasn't felt good. And now here's how I would like to be treated.
Hmm.
And we work on this. And then it gives that person an opportunity, that the person that you love, you know, an opportunity to love you in the way that you want to be loved and that you need to be loved. And then give them that space to test it out, because they're going to have a hard time with it too, because these are all new boundaries for them. They're used to you being one way. And now here you are, standing in your power, recognizing your truth and setting your boundary. It's not going to, again, that change isn't going to happen overnight.
Because if you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you always got.
That's right.
And it is so, you know, now at 57, I think the big aha happened when I was um, 46, dated a narcissist. That didn't work out. Dated another narcissist because I had to get that lesson again. And then another thing happened. Married to someone that had some of those qualities and still did not. I mean, until I said yes to me, it was like, oh, wow, this is it. And I used to blame my parents. I'm like, when they left, I mean, my story. And a lot of you guys know my story. Yes, adopted at 18 months old by a 46 and 56-year-old parent. So they're going to be older. But at 35 and 36, when they both left, when I had my Steel Magnolias moment and went to the cemetery and I said, I just want to know why, why did they leave me? And what I heard was, so you could grow up. And that was so hard. It took me 10 years and lessons to grow up. And I said, if I could teach these lessons or teach these aha moments so someone else could make a quicker shift or put the pieces of the puzzle together, they had to do the work, obviously. It is so, I don't know, I think it really changed me. And it took me at 46 to 50 to realize what it meant to be a non-people pleaser. And then at 50, I'm like, no, I will do my best not to make sure that happens. Christina says, makes so much sense. You lose your true self. So true. Tracy says, how do we teach our kids to have boundaries? I don't want her son, Emerson, to get walked all over if I'm not right next to him in his career.
It's a
And her
wonderful
son models. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's an incredible question. And I don't think there's just one answer. I don't think there's just one answer. But as far as teaching kids to have boundaries, it's treating kids like, honestly, little adults. Sometimes I think parents want to protect their kids so much that you can be so overprotective that they never learn the skills to do it for themselves. So the fact that you're even mindful about wanting to teach kids early on these boundaries is the first step. And then secondly, it all comes down to communication and how we're communicating with each other. Because again, like I was telling you, as adults, we have to take responsibility for when we've taught someone to behave a certain way around us through our words and actions or through our silence. Because if we're silent for years and behavior is allowed to go on, you have to reteach them. So, and not be confrontational in a negative, unhealthy way, be confrontational in, I recognize how I participated in this and how I allowed this to happen. And now I would like to see something different. Can we do this together? We're co-creating new moments together. We're co-creating a new way of interacting with each other. So the same is true of kids, just teaching them how to communicate. If my kid was going to school and someone was treating them in a hurtful way, there are ways to teach kids, how to use their language to speak up for themselves, to say, hey, that doesn't feel good, and that it's okay to speak up and say that that doesn't feel good, not just to allow it to happen. I'm not a professional, so I wouldn't, I'm not a psychiatrist or, a counselor. But I'm sure there's got to be books out there on parenting these days, especially for ways to speak to children and maybe some best practices, to incorporate as you're teaching them. because you want your kids to be safe. You want them to learn these skills early on so that they can be healthy adults and they don't have to like
Right.
learn it when they're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years old.
And I was just about to say, and she just popped up on screen, Sue Page, who is the owner and founder of Pathways to Successful Living. And Sue has, this is where I learned a lot of my stuff and use it today, about teaching people how to trust, how to forgive, how to own their own voice, and ways to be respected. And in these classes that she offers, both online and doing one in person coming up in Chicago area, by the way,
Nice.
it is it's wonderful. So thank you,
I see.
Sue, for being on here. um there's there are some DeMarco, there are some awesome. I
I think
think
you.
you're saying awesome, maybe. Oh, awesome books out there. Sorry, didn't see your next to it. Yes, thank you
Yeah,
so much.
DeMarco's a life coach, so he's familiar with those types of books and resources
Yep,
that are out there.
same here. And hi, Priscilla. Hi, Sue. And we talk about honoring self, and Ronnie has just mentioned some great skills. It's about, once again, we both have said this, saying yes to yourself, so important. Looking at those patterns, and like we both have said, stepping out of that comfort zone and really doing the work. It's one thing saying you're doing the work, and another thing about taking action. And that's, guys, how you manifest too. You manifest by feeling it, by doing it, putting action into it, and just saying yes and doing it. And as you do these things, and as much as I do that, when you make something a habit and you start doing it, it takes 3 weeks for it to be like, yeah, I got it. It's in
Minimum.
there. Yeah. Yeah.
Minimum.
And it's really being mindful of that. Does anybody have any questions for Ronnie? And while we're waiting for that, what are you coming up with, Ronnie? Anything that you're working on currently?
Oh my goodness. Well, I just finished an incredible stage version of the movie Clue.
Oh,
I, you know,
cool.
I had a blast working with this cast and crew. A wonderful human being by the name of Sheridan Ward. Um, Not only produced it, but directed it, acted in it, and marketed, did everything for it. And she brought this incredibly talented group together for this experience. And I had not been on stage for 15 years. I had not filmed a movie in 5 years. So it was really a way for me to get my creative juices going and get a taste for it again. And so I have this craving, this crazy craving. I want to be in a film or a stage play where I get to play a villain character. All these shadowy parts of self that we've been talking about. Like I think it would just be so fun to bring a villain to life because they have so many layers. Because think about it, characters, villain characters, they don't know what they're doing is necessarily wrong or right. They just feel
Right.
they're just human beings living their life. So I would love to bring a villain to life. So I'm on the lookout to play a villain in a movie or a play. I'm currently just still, working on healing and loving myself. And, I use social media more oftentimes than not as a way to share what I'm learning and experiencing in real time. So I share a lot of quotes, I share a lot of resources. I started my own 2 nights of evening talk shows on Tuesdays and Thursdays, just as a way to continue to find my voice, develop my voice, and provide resources for other people. And that's Behind the Smile on Tuesday nights, and then Rising in Love on Thursday nights. And they paused while I was in the play, but I'm bringing them back in March. So if you guys are interested, you can follow me on social media. I do them on Instagram Live, and I'll be bringing them back in March.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Tracy says Elias Emerson is now a signed model actor in Chicago, Florida, LA, and New York at 11 years old. That's awesome.
Wow.
That's
That's
awesome.
amazing.
That's
That's great.
awesome.
Yeah.
Christina says the hardest part about being a parent is stepping back and allowing your kids to make their own mistakes and learning from them. No one can teach you lessons better than yourself. So true. And then Priscilla went ahead and put your Instagram on
Oh,
here so
thank you,
people can see
Priscilla.
it. Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
Priscilla. Thank you so much. Now, I wanted to honor your time because I told you we'd make it about 45 minutes or so. And because you have your gig coming up after this, correct?
Not tonight.
Oh, not tonight.
I'm not restarting those until March. So
To March. Okay. Okay. I thought you were doing something tonight, but
I was originally,
okay.
but since I did the play, I pushed pause on those. So I'm
Okay.
with you. I'm here.
Okay. We'll go. Are you okay to go for another
We
15
can talk
minutes?
for a little while. Yeah,
Okay, great.
I'm
Does
having a great
anybody
time, and I'm loving everyone's comments. It's wonderful.
good? Does anybody have any questions for Ronnie about what does it mean to honor self? What does it mean to, not that we haven't stated it, but ways to do it, or you want to know more about Ronnie and talk about it? We're all good. We're all good. So put your questions in the comments, and I say cheers once again.
Oh, I'm gonna have some water too. I've got a cat.
Uh-oh.
He's comfortable. I don't want to mess that up.
Now, the movie that you were in 5 years ago, you want to go ahead and tell people the title?
Yeah, that was called Bob. It was a short film, and it was kind of in the romantic comedy slash kind of ghost story genre. And it was about a couple that moves into their apartment for the first time together, and it's haunted by a spirit. And
Cool.
they're trying to figure out if he's a good spirit, a not so good spirit. Why is he there? And is he going to stay there, or can they move him along somewhere else? And, it's a really wonderful story by my friends John and Jason, and they wrote it, they directed it, they acted in it, and they welcomed me to be a part of their little film family. So I'm grateful.
Oh, that's cool.
That. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I
awesome.
believe you can see it on Amazon Prime.
Okay. And
Yeah.
it's Bob, you guys. B-O-B. Also
Mm-hmm.
spelled backwards.
B-O-B.
B-O-B. DeMarco says, what has been the most revealing in identifying a boundary?
What has been the most revealing? I think the most revealing thing in identifying a boundary is how long I've gone without having that boundary, and how long I've gone disrespecting myself without even realizing it. Yeah. It's really showed me how what I've thought about myself. I've walked, there's so many people walking around in life that don't like themselves. And by not setting boundaries, it's a clear indication that you don't like yourself, or that you're willing to put everybody else before you. Boundaries aren't bad. And it takes time to realize that boundaries are actually a healthy and necessary thing, because they actually help us improve our communication and our relationships, whether they be romantic, whether they be at work, whether they be with friends, colleagues, associates. Yeah, I didn't realize how much or how little I thought of myself by not setting those boundaries. So as I've been learning how to set boundaries, it's all again part of self-love.
Awesome. Awesome. Got a couple more comments. Danya says, just want to say thanks so much. This whole conversation has been life affirming. Thank you so much.
Hi, Danya.
Priscilla says, why is your middle name Friend? Can you tell us how that started?
Back in 2012, I co-founded an organization called Friend Movement, and our whole goal was to prevent and heal the effects of bullying. And instead of being against bullies or bullying, we were pro-friendship. And so as a mechanism and a vehicle to promote our work, we ask people to change their middle name to friend, because the first step in being a better friend to other people is learning how to be a better friend to yourself. And again, that goes along with self-care, self-love. And I always go back to Whitney Houston's song "The Greatest Love of All," because learning to love yourself truly is the greatest love of all, because once you learn to love yourself more and you fill your own cup, that overflow is going to be a flood that you can then share with other people. But if you're giving from an empty cup, you're going to build up resentment, like I spoke about earlier in the conversation. So learning how to be your own best friend, learning how to embrace the fact that you're imperfectly perfect. You're an imperfect human being with light and dark parts. Learning how to forgive yourselves for the things that you've done wrong. And learning how to do this, to give yourself grace, to be patient with yourself as you're learning and growing. When you're able to forgive yourself, give yourself grace, be patient with yourself, it's a magic. It's unbelievable how you can then extend that to your fellow human beings. You'll be less
That's right.
critical of them. You'll be less judgmental of them. You'll be quick to forgive them, because you oftentimes bad behavior shows up because it's born out of fear, insecurity, and trauma that has been unresolved. But when you meet someone that is nasty with you, the ego and the fear part of the human wants to go toe to toe with them initially. You have that knee jerk emotional response. You want to give that energy back. But the truth is that how they're treating you has nothing to do with you. It's a projection of where they are.
So true.
So, yeah.
Priscilla says, I like it. Thank you for explaining. And then she put this on her as well. She said she was just curious. Karen says, how did your relationship change when you explained you wanted the boundary to change?
Well, since I'm still learning how to place boundaries and practice them, some have gone better than others. Some people unfortunately had to exit my life because they were unable to accept the boundary. And that was difficult, to be honest, especially through all of the COVID times and all of the political, rhetoric and the hate speech and the back and forth of making each other enemies. If you're not with me, you're against me. I mean, look at how our politics in the COVID times have really torn families apart and really torn friendships apart that have been together for 20 plus years. I've lost some friendships that I had spent a lot of time cultivating, but realized that it was okay to still love those people from a distance, whether I had to cut them off or whether they cut me off arbitrarily. That at this moment in time in my life, I could still love them, but I had to protect my energy first and foremost. And I left the door open. I didn't shut it. I didn't burn the bridge. If they want to come and cross that bridge or open that door another time, and they're willing and able to work with me on that boundary, then I'm open arms and my heart is open. And for others, they got it right away. They said, oh, absolutely. Of course you need this, and it's just about, it's practice. You have to be your own best scientist in life. Failure is a part of success. And unfortunately, I think sometimes in our society, we've been taught that failure is fatal, but it's not. The only way you're going to be successful in anything you're attempting to do, whether that's going after a dream, for me to be in film or television, or to just, lay down a boundary, you have to try it and see what works. It's not always going to work the first or second time out of the gate. It's going to take practice. But most importantly, it has to come from a place of love of self and love of the other person. If you're coming at it based in fear and anger, setting that boundary, you're planting seeds of fear, anger, and toxicity. That's where it's going to come from. And it's difficult because, trust me, I grew up in a household where my mom taught me that if I'm not yelling, I don't care. But she learned that from her parents, and yelling became a way of showing love. And so in my relationships, I couldn't understand why some of my partners wouldn't yell back at me, or I would be like, well, clearly you don't love me because you're not arguing with me, you're not yelling
Right.
at me.
Right.
And it's taken several relationships to get to a place where I can now see that just because I'm shouting louder doesn't mean that my argument is stronger. Doesn't mean that I love them anymore. In fact, it actually turns a lot of people off. So we're mirrors for each other. So when you can recognize we're mirrors for each other, and the good that you see in other people and also the not so great that you see in other people exists in you too, then you can
Right.
see what a great life experiment this all is, this human experience that our soul is having. So be patient with yourself and with others as you start to practice boundaries, because it's going to take a little time. And I would say don't shy away from placing them there, even if you get a negative response. And pay attention to the people that respect your boundaries, because those are the people that you want around you. If they
Right.
can't respect your boundary, you don't have to hate them, but you also don't have to have them in your inner circle of influence, because you're working really hard to heal. You're doing the work to love yourself, and those people's energies are just going to bring you down.
And that's why we always say, it's so interesting. I teach clients that work with me that, it is about calling in those like people that vibrate at your vibration or higher. And it's so important to do that, because then you're in alignment with others, but the other people do come in to show you a reason, or as we know, they're in there for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, and each person gets you to the next growth for self. There was a book that I reached for. There was a book that it talks about finding strength in difficult times, and this is it. It's called The Courageous Heart. There is 25 of us in here. My chapter is called, whoops, where is it? Um, my chapter is saying yes to self by moving forward. And there's several stories in here that talks about courage, and that's another piece of honoring self is courage.
I love
um
the artwork on that cover too. It's beautiful
yeah,
art.
isn't it cool? It's really cool.
That's
Kira, who is a publisher, she did a great job, and she's done a lot of these types of books. They're awesome. um I'm going to ask you, because we haven't done this, you and I together. Pick a number 1 through 100.
1 through 100. Let's do 15 is calling out to me.
15. Okay, so guys, this is from the universe to our hearts, and it's 100 heartfelt thoughts from the universe for everyday life. So I'm going to look at number 15. This is how we're going to end our time together, everybody, and then I'll make an announcement or two. Interesting, you picked this one. Um, Intuition.
Mm.
We all have intuition. We use it without even knowing it. It's a gut feeling about something. It's when you just know that you're doing the right thing. It's usually the first thought or feeling that you have about something, but then your brain might kick in and dismiss it. Trust, honor, feel, and grow your intuition. When you connect with your intuition, listen for it, listen to it. That is learning to trust yourself. This is how the universe talks to us, by whispering into our hearts, into our inner voice, where intuition is stored.
That's
Proud of you.
beautiful.
Thanks.
Thank you for sharing
Um,
with me.
oh, of course. Thank you for picking that. Tracy said, I was screaming 15. She's fun. Um, so, guys, please follow Ronnie on Instagram and also on Facebook. And you have your Priscilla has listed the many things that you are on, and I'm just going to all of them. Thank you, Priscilla, for doing that. And I'm looking all the way up here, seeing, yep, then there we go. Here it is, here as well. So just Google them, guys. Google
Yeah,
them.
Yeah, come
And
hang out. Like, comment, share some of the things I've been discovering. Like I said, I try to use social media. You might get a sexy model photo here and there. It's not always safe for work, so be careful.
be
But
careful.
most of the time, I'm promoting resources and tools as I'm learning and growing and discovering things. And I follow, well, of course, you, Elias, and I follow so many other just diverse group of voices, of healers and spiritual workers. And when they post something I resonate with, I try to reshare it, and in hopes that the people that are in my little spiritual community are going to be able to incorporate that into their life and learn and grow along with me. So
And you're also on Clubhouse too, correct?
I am. I'm not as active on Clubhouse. It's so funny. I joined early on, and then I invited all these friends, and they've been thriving and loving it, and I just haven't used it. But I'm just so honestly, social media, I've had to find a way to find my healthy boundaries around social
Right.
media, because it can be so addictive at times, and it can sometimes, there's an extent to where it's healthy and helpful, and then there's an extent to where it's just an addiction and it's a time waste, a time sink.
Right.
So,
So true.
I mean, I'm on TikTok and I haven't even made a TikTok, and I should get hip with all the whippersnappers and the
With
kids.
all the whippersnappers. Well, I'll have
But
to
I
tell
can't
you,
even
there
say
are.
that anymore because there's like 80-year-old grandmothers on
I
TikTok.
was gonna say there's 80-year-old grandmas and everything else. That's so true.
I think I'm just
Um,
afraid. That's all. I think I'm afraid.
I would just, if I could do it, so can you. So can you. I want to thank you, but I also want to tell everybody, come back. Saturday we do spirit chat, and you'll never know what happens in spirit chat. It could be Q&A, it could be messages from above, it can be how-tos. You never know. And sometimes we have a special guest as well. Also, next Tuesday we have the CEO and co-founder of Celebrate Your Life events, Mishka Productions, and that is Liz Dawn. And she is known as the fairy godmother of love. And we're going to talk about love and relationships because, guys, it's February and it's all about love. Next month, the theme for next month is renewal. So, super excited about that. Meditations, as Priscilla has put on here, Wednesdays at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time and Sundays 7 p.m. So thank you. Crystal says thank you both. What time Saturday? Saturday, Danya, is at 5 p.m. Pacific time. So 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. It's crazy that I had to do all these time change things as I drove across 2,000 miles. Crystal says, thank you both so very much.
Thank you so much for
Tracy
being here.
says, thank you so much. Have a great night. Thank you as well. Christina, you're welcome. And yes, thank you. And I am doing a free event online, guys, at East West Bookstore in Seattle online. And there are some major big hitters that they have, like Juliet Cameron, and they've had Eckhart Tolle on there. And I've been so blessed to be able to do a free event there. Please sign up. It's free. Come support me. It's 5:30 to 7 Pacific Standard Time. It's switching our mindset, kind of what we're talking about.
Love it.
And I really appreciate it for you guys to be here. Ronnie, thank you, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. And anything that I can do to help you as well, please let me know. You are someone who has not aged. You look the same as you did as I met you. Oh my God, what is it? It feels like
20
it's
years.
like 15, 20 years ago.
20
Crazy,
years.
right? Crazy, crazy, crazy. Well, I appreciate you being here. Everyone, thank you. And as always, we are here to connect. And when we connect, we educate one another. And we educate, we grow. There is unity in community. From my heart to yours, thank you, everybody. Ronnie, hold that thought for a second. And we'll see you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. for guided meditation.